There are many reasons why birds are important to us. They control pests. It is estimated that birds eat somewhere between 400 and 500 million tons of insects a year. Across only the Americas, evening grosbeaks have provided economic value of $1,820 per square kilometre during outbreaks of spruce budworm. Nest boxes are being used to assist pest control throughout Europe. Around 5% of the plants we use for food or medicine are pollinated by birds. Vultures are frequently described as nature's cleanup crew. Other scavengers take longer to arrive on scene, and this can allow deadly diseases such as rabies and tuberculosis to spread. Vultures typically descend within an hour of death, and when Asia's vulture population collapsed, the feral dog population exploded by 5.5 million. Rabies spread, and human deaths were estimated at 47,300. When birds travel, they take seeds that they've eaten and disperse them through their droppings. In New Zealand's forests, 70% of the plants have seeds dispersed by birds, such as the tui. These are just some of the reasons why birds are so important. But birds and their habitats are in danger.
The threats posed by climate change have been well documented by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Since about 1900, we've seen temperatures go up by about 1 degree centigrade, and we've seen sea level rise by about 20 centimetres. In turn, this has caused extreme events such as droughts and fires and flooded wetlands with seawater, and all of these things destroys habitats for birds. It destroys their food sources and can kill the birds directly. Birds also face a really big threat due to the human use of land and resources. For example, throughout the whole world, we've converted about a third of the land surface to agriculture. And within the last 30 years, the urban space has doubled, and this also destroys birds' habitats and food. In the UK, we currently have a huge opportunity to improve the way we manage land. As we move away from the European subsidies which paid farmers for the area of land they farmed, we're moving to the Environmental Land Management Scheme, which will actually pay farmers for improving the environmental sustainability of their practices. So, for example, it will pay farmers to introduce wetlands and pond areas, to increase hedgerows and forest land, and to plant flowers that are beneficial to insects and birds. So apart from what's going on internationally, nationally, and even within our cities, there's what we can do as individuals as well. And I don't want to give you a long list of turning off lights and walking instead of taking the car. I think it's more about just getting out and enjoying nature and appreciating what's there. One of the initiatives I really like that's come from an individual is Bird Girl, Maya Rose Craig. She's a Bristol teenager, and she started off a project to take minority ethnic children and other teenagers out into nature and to enjoy it. And I think that's where it starts for me, that if people might feel that individually they can't achieve much, but collectively they can, and the starting point of that is getting out there and looking at nature and enjoying it and talking to people about it, and the rest will follow on from there.
BBC television programmes such as Springwatch have long been informing and engaging the public in climate change issues and how we can help as citizens of the planet.
The reason that Springwatch, the BBC TV show that I ran for 15 years, the reason it's called Springwatch is because we set out at the beginning to watch spring. It's as simple as that. Because the scientists were saying, there's this thing happening. This is way back in 2005 when the really specialist scientists were talking about climate change, but nobody else was. Nobody else really saw it as a big deal. And the scientists came to us and said, we need to collect data. We need to find out what is actually happening, because we think that this kind of change of a global climate will be affecting how nature works, how spring happens, how all these different very cleverly interleaved systems in nature that we are in awe of still don't fully understand, how they're changing. So we set out to watch spring for many years. For 5 or more years, we had hundreds of thousands of wonderful audience members basically collecting sightings, in their gardens like this. When was their first snowdrop? When was this butterfly? When they first see this? When was the first swift that they saw flying in from Africa? Lots and lots of data. So it was very, very robust. And lo and behold, it was clear that things were already changing in quite a significant way. You'd think, oh, come on, it's not going to make that much difference. They've been around for millions of years. But actually, things were changing very, very, very fast. And cut long story short, we worked with a lot of scientists. We fed our data into their wonderful work. And this great big pile of really important data then went to the European Union around 2009, 2010, that kind of time. And it became the big, if you like, canary in the coal mine that said, hang on a minute, this is real, this is happening. And this is what shifted the European Union into saying, we have to do something. It's happening on our doorstep. We've heard about it happening around the world. And they changed their behavior. So this is people power. This is one of the great things about where the media, something like Springwatch, a movement, if you like. Now it's happening more on social media, of course, where people get involved because they were telling the story. They were telling the story of a changing spring, and they were becoming much more aware of the fact that they were part of the story. It's happening here, right under our noses. And actually, that's one of the great things nowadays, that people, ordinary people, everybody, all of us, can contribute to what's called citizen science. And our example of the Springwatch survey over many, many years is the best proof that people power, citizen science can do really important things and make incontrovertible evidence that changes the minds of policymakers.
As Tim has mentioned, public engagement can be helpful in not only acting on climate change issues, but also in collecting data for use in scientific studies. The State of the UK's Birds provides an annual overview of the UK's breeding and non-breeding bird species. The report is jointly published by a number of bodies, including the Wildfowl and Wetlands Trust, the British Trust for Ornithology, and the RSPB. The 2020 report highlighted the continuing poor fortunes of the UK's woodland birds. Since the early 1970s, numbers have declined by 27%. Marcus Gilmartin is a twitcher. He is acutely aware of the changes in the UK bird population.
Things like thrushes, turtle doves, cuckoos, they are in absolute structural terminal decline. All the farm birds, tree sparrows, corn buntings, they're down 70-80%. And they will get to that pivotal, that threshold where they won't be able to come back. And it's mainly the migrating birds that we've seen have really been hit hard. We used to have lots of swifts and swallows and things like this, flycatchers, redstarts, and they're all, they're getting harder and harder to see. But there are these areas where they've allowed rewilding and things like nightingales. This year, nightingales, the best year, I believe, anecdotally, for 10, 20, 30 years, nightingale numbers. So something's going on, and I think we need to look at our local landscapes a bit more closely and try and hold on to them. Our peat bogs and meadows, noble trees, rivers, we don't seem to hold them in high regard, and it'll come back and bite us, I think, in the end.
If we are to make a difference to the crisis we are facing, everyone has a role. From the top world scientists, NGOs such as the RSPB, BTO, and many others, to the bird watchers, and to the citizens. We can all play a part. It's not just for the birds.
Thanks for watching the documentary. Special thanks to Tim Scoons, Marcus Gilmartin, Hugo Martin, Morgan Woodhouse, and Joe House, and Ashley Wood. And special thanks to Access Creative and the RSPB for putting this whole thing together.